What's up YouTube? Welcome to the channel, and this is my 2011 Salvage Ford Mustang Convertible project, and today we're going to continue on with the repairs that we made in the previous video. But before we get to that, if you enjoy cars just as much as I do, then consider clicking that subscribe button so you can follow along with everything that goes on here on the channel. Now previously we had removed our bad body panels, mocked up some of our new body panels, and we had removed the radiator support. And today we're going to mock up our new radiator support, replace our damaged radiator, and try to get this thing a little closer to the ground. Now you can see I have the brand new radiator support zip screwed in the correct position. Now I've taken my measurements and I've double checked bolt holes from here to up here, and everything seems to be lined up really well. And I'm pretty happy with the way this thing fits. Now we're not going to really be able to tell what the final fitment's going to be like until we start assembling some of this front end stuff like the bumper and the headlights and the fenders. So obviously that's the next step, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to reinstall the fenders. We got a brand new set of headlights, and we're going to reinstall the front bumper cover. The quick mock-up is complete, and as you can see, everything seems to line up pretty good. We have our brand new headlights in on both sides, and we just have the bumper cover up there temporarily just to kind of see how everything lines up. Now that's going to have to come back off so we can fit a few more pieces in before we get the final fitment going on, because we don't have our bracket up the top. If you see, it's missing. We need to drill a couple holes on the sides because of the conversion, and we need to put all that stuff in and make sure that bracket's going to fit well before we move any further as far as disassembling this and painting that radiator support. Well, it's been a few days, but we're back out here with the Mustang, and you can see that we have our bumper bracket installed, this upper bracket. Now this holds the top part of the bumper here, and you can see with that pretty much completes the entire front end of the car, minus the plastic that goes across right here, and we'll install that later on. But before we go to putting this bumper cover on, we need to take it back off because we have some parts. We have our brand new radiator that we ordered ready to go in, and we have our brand new set of front and rear lowering springs that need to be installed. So to remove the radiator, we're going to need to pull this front bumper cover back off because there's bolts that hold the AC condenser to the radiator, and we need to remove those. So let's get this thing under the carport because it's a little rainy today, and we're not going to let that deter us. We're going to get this thing done. The new radiator is in, and we have the engine running, and we have it up to operating temperature. As you can hear, the fan is actually came on, and this thing is full of coolant. We've squeezed the hoses, trying to get some of that air out of the system, and now we can look and check for leaks, and there doesn't seem to be any either on the side tanks or at the hoses. Everything looks really good. It's really nice and dry. The fan's kind of loud, but that fan lets us know that it is up to operating temperature. And since we don't have any kind of leaks in the cooling system, and now we can get that front bumper cover back on. Now before I go putting this front bumper cover back on, there's one little customization that I want to do that I think it'll make this whole front end look a lot better, and that is to remove this chrome trim here and paint it black. There's not really any other chrome on the front end of the car, so I just don't really feel like that really fits in with the front end. So I think it'll look a lot better, kind of give it that GT kind of look. And you might have already realized I've done a little bit of customization already. Now this is a 3-piece Roush Racing style front spoiler, and I think it looks way better than the factory one. It's going to make this front end look really aggressive, especially once we get that trim right there sprayed black. Now that we have our radiator installed, it's time to install our lowering springs. And as you can see, this thing is raised up quite a bit. It sits way up, and I just really don't like that. We got a set of D2 lowering springs. I've showed you these earlier, and basically they're 2-inch drop in the back, roughly around 1.6 or 1.5 inches in the front. Now before we get started installing the springs, I'm going to take some measurements, and that way we can see exactly how much the car drops. Up in the front, it looks like we have about a 3.5-inch gap, and in the back we have around a 3 3/4 inch gap. Now these springs will bring this car down and give it a better looking stance. Now it's pretty straightforward. In the back, you really just undo the sway bar, you undo your lower strut bolts, and lower the rear end down, pull your springs out, put the new springs back in, and then you're good to go there. In the front's a little different story. You need to take the wheels off, you need to remove the top hat, and that'll release the spring, and you can pull all the components out and then just reinstall them back in the car. As you can see, I've got the car jacked up and I've got the tools all ready to go, but I wanted to show you one thing that I noticed here. Now we have to drop this sway bar, and apparently it's a common problem on these things to have in-link problems where they knock. You hear that? That's bad. So we've got a pair of brand new in-links that we're going to install while we're doing this job. The new lowering springs are in, and as you can see, it wasn't really that bad. I really wasn't expecting to have to drop these subframe connectors, but I really had to so I could get that axle down far enough so I could get the springs in. I have the rear sway bar out, and now I can show you what the end links, you see that play? They got a lot of play in them, which is not good. And that one's not too bad, but it definitely has some play in it. This one over here on the passenger side is definitely the worst. Those lowering springs made a drastic improvement to the look of the back of the car. As you can see, that gap right there has tightened up pretty good. Now I'm really happy with the way this looks so far. Now we need to just move on to the front. And the front's going to be a little harder than the back because we're going to need to remove the front wheels and remove the struts. springs are off. Now it's time to get the new springs on. With the front end back together and the lowering springs on, you can see that those springs have gave the car a drastic new look. We pretty much just about cut our wheel gaps in half in the front and the rear, and it gives it a much more aggressive look, and I'm really happy with the way it looks. While this thing was up on the jack stands, I went ahead and I completely installed the front bumper cover, and I installed the splash shield that goes underneath the bumper cover, as you can see there. And now you can see our trim piece that I painted black. It looks way better than the chrome that was on there, and I'm happy with everything so far. So the only downside to having this thing together is that it is going to have to come back apart. Now this is just a mock-up to see how all the panels would fit, and so we can take it for a test drive, obviously. But eventually we're going to have to bring it back. We're going to have to take the entire front end back off the car. The fenders, the headlights, the bumper cover, all that stuff's got to come back off, because if you remember, we just zip screwed in the radiator support, and we need to finish that up, which means we're going to need to spot weld that in, and we're going to have to paint it, and then we can reinstall all of our parts and it'll be completely finished. Now that we have the front end mocked up, we can take this thing out on the road for a test drive before tearing it back down again to put in that radiator support permanently, which is what we'll do in the next video. So until then, I'd like to say thank you for watching. Be sure to check out all my videos on all my other projects, and if you're not subscribed, consider clicking the subscribe button, click the bell so you'll get the notifications, and you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram.